Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to have you with us today as we celebrate the Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. Lucas St. Clair was one of the primary forces behind the National Monument and is the president of Elliotsville Foundation. Lucas, we are so grateful to have you here today to share about this rich and storied example of the Maine Woods and help us celebrate the 6th anniversary of the monument. My name is Kathleen Neal. I am the Director of Policy and Partnerships here at Maine Conservation Voters and Maine Conservation Alliance. Our organizations represent more than 13,000 members and supporters dedicated to protecting Maine's environment and our democracy. MCA does that through education, collaboration, and advocacy, and MCV by influencing public policy, holding politicians accountable, and winning elections. A few technical notes for today. We will hear from Lucas first and then tackle your questions in the Q&A session at the end. You don't have to wait, though. You can send questions to me through the chat whenever they occur to you, and I'll keep track of them and ask those during the Q&A session at the end. We ask that you not message speakers directly, as we want Lucas to be able to focus on the story he's sharing rather than the chat box. If you do have any questions or technical difficulties, you can message Will Sedlak. This event is being recorded and the video will be posted on our website later this afternoon, where you can also find recordings of all of our previous Lunch and Learns. Thank you all for joining us. And Lucas, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you very much. It's nice to be here with you all virtually and have the opportunity to share a bit about the story of creating the National Monument and what's happened since. It's been 6 years. I can't believe that this time has gone by so quickly. My name is Lucas St. Clair, and I'm the president of Elliotsville Foundation, which is a private operating foundation. We have an office here in Portland, where I am today, and we have an office in the Katahdin region where we do a lot of our work. And at one point, we owned about 120,000 acres of land, 90-ish thousand of which was just to the east of Park, and was bought mainly from large timber owners. The majority of it came from the Irving Company. And over the course of about 15 years, my mom, Roxanne Quimby, started to acquire and piece together this land. And when we had this contiguous land mass next to Baxter Park, we started working on creating a national park. That was the goal, is to donate the land to the National Park Service and create a park unit that would conserve the land, but also provide access for recreation and what we thought would be a really interesting way to diversify the economy. Because as I'm sure you all know, there are communities around Maine that are looking for alternatives since the closure of a large paper mill. That's happened in several communities, and Millinocket and East Millinocket were two of them. So we started working, I started working on the project in 2011, and our goal was to have it completed by August 25th, 2016, which is the 100th anniversary of the National Park Service. We thought that would be a fitting goal to create a landscape-sized park unit in the East, where we don't have a lot of real big parks. And we worked very closely with Senator King and Senator Collins, and ultimately got to the point where we were unable to convince them and encourage them to introduce legislation to create the park. And so we changed our tactics in the winter of 2015 and 2016 and started working closely with the Department of Interior and the White House to try to get the Obama administration at the end of 2016 to use the 1906 Antiquities Act, which gives him the authority to sign a presidential proclamation to create a unit of the Park Service with donated land. And we worked very hard over the course of about 6 months, 7 months, to identify the objects of importance within the landscape and identify all the reasons why this is a unique and beautiful place that's worthy of being a national park unit. And when everyone was thoroughly convinced, on August 24th, 2016, President Barack Obama signed a presidential proclamation that created the monument. And it was a tremendously exciting time for us. As you can imagine, my mom had worked on this for 20 years. I had worked on it for 5 very intense years, and to have it sort of resolved was a really exciting time. And so we had a big celebration in the Katahdin region, and the Secretary of Interior came, and there were several hundred community members and a lot of speeches, and then a big dinner and dancing. And after all the speeches had been made, and I was sort of transitioning from the to kind of get into the party mode and have dinner and listen to some music, a member of the Maliseet Nation came up to me and introduced himself and told me how excited he was to have the land in federal ownership, because it's much easier for a tribal nation to have a nation-to-nation relationship when it comes to land management. And that he was congratulated me for the work that I had done, and then reminded me that this land, while we were able to give it away historically, was not ours and was stolen from Wabanaki people. And it was like a lightning bolt had went off and sort of zapped me square in the forehead. And I had realized this tremendous mistake that I had made while I worked on the advocacy. I checked in with tribal members. I checked in with Chief Francis. He ultimately wrote an op-ed in support of what we were doing, but I did not take it as seriously as I needed to. I failed to acknowledge that this land was and is the ancestral territory of the Penobscot Nation, and it is unceded and taken from them, and that there were some really damaging things that have happened in Maine to tribal communities. And what I considered America's best idea is the creation of a national park, the true representation of American democracy. I learned that not everyone thinks that, and that our democracy was actually formed on 2 horrible atrocities: slavery and the genocide of Native people. And as I started to learn more, I realized the mistakes that I had made in the advocacy and the work to create the monument. And I decided that I would start working to understand tribal communities more. I would try to understand what sovereignty meant. I would take a real deep dive into my own colonial settler brain and know that I was raised and taught a variety of things throughout my life that were not true, and that I had to work very deliberately, and I still have to work deliberately to unprogram and rewire my circuitry to understand what it really means to be decolonized and what it means to try to work in a collaborative way with tribal nations. And so one very unique thing that was a result of our donation of land is right before we gave the title, turned the title over to the federal government, we negotiated with the Department of Justice to reserve the rights to do things on this land after it became a national park. And this has never been done before, and the Department of Justice was a little uneasy about encumbering federal land, but ultimately we compromised, and they said you can have 7 years to own these reserved rights, and you can build things and build infrastructure on specific places, and it can be specific, certainly specific things, Um, and after 7 years, everything that you do gets turned over to the Park Service. So ultimately, that is what we agreed on. And so after the monument was established, there was a planning period, and the Park Service did a very extensive outreach to various community members, various communities that were adjacent to the monument and were less adjacent to the monument, and then communities that were farther away, I think as far as southern Maine, to understand what visitors were looking for and what things were important to see and what things were important to protect. And so over the course of a few years, a management planning process was carried out. And at the end of that, we decided that it was a great opportunity for us to begin to use our reserved rights, to exercise those rights and build some of this infrastructure. And in 2018, we started by writing a letter to the 4 chiefs of the federally recognized tribes in Maine, and asking if there were members of their communities that would be willing to work in consultation with Elliotsville, which is our foundation, to think about building infrastructure. And ultimately, we were given about a dozen names, and we hired this group of people to work with us to design what ultimately would be a visitor contact station. A visitor contact station is a very kind of specific type of welcome center that exists in national parks that offer education and orientation. So when a visitor shows up in a national park and goes to a visitor contact station, they get some information about where they are and what they should go and do, and then a bit about the history and culture of the landscape. And so we've now been working on building this building in very close collaboration with what we call the Wabanaki Advisory Board, and have done a tremendous amount of training and collaborative work to have the National Park Service, our foundation, and tribal nations work in a cooperative way in which we can have visitors to Katahdin Woods and Waters understand a Indigenous worldview. And our goal is to really put that at the forefront. So one of the people that we hired is Jennifer Neptune, and Jennifer worked to draft the interpretive framework. So she did many interviews with Native community members and visitors and Park Service, and she and one other person that was working in consultation with us created this framework that will then identify the things that will be on exhibit and display and part of the education and orientation. And really everything about this building and the landscape and the landscaping, and it will be centered on Indigenous ideas, Indigenous art, craft, and the worldview. And what I think is most unique and what I've learned most about this is really, I think from a settler colonial mindset, we often think about land conservation as stewardship, as we're here to take care of this place. And that certainly was my mindset for a long, long time. And what I've learned from Native community members that I've been working with is it really is about a relationship. We're here to be in relationship with this landscape, and we give to it certain things and it gives back to us certain things. And recognizing that dynamic has been a really important part of our work, and really what we want to convey to visitors as they experience this landscape over the years. It's an interesting thing to think about, protecting land and knowing that it's going to be protected forever, and what that idea means when we even saying it's protected, who are we protecting it from, and why. When we think about preservation, when we think about conservation, these are sort of loaded words that really, I think, need some unpacking. And because of the sort of longevity, and sort of the static nature of protection, there's this overlay of the dynamic human experience, and that makes it really an exciting thing to work through and try to understand, and to set up something that really can be part of an evolution. And it really is something that I know is unique to the Park Service, this idea of cooperative management. It's happened at Bears Ears, in a very exciting and kind of roller coaster ride there. And now we're focusing on what that might look like in a unit of the Park Service here in Maine. And it also is a really opportune time to start working in this way with our Secretary of Interior, is a member of the Tribal Nation, as well as the Director of the National Park Service, Chuck Sams, is also a member of Tribal Nations. And this is of real importance to both of them, to make sure that the Native communities that this is their homeland, have an opportunity to represent themselves within the framework that is the Park Service. So that's what has been going on for the last 4 years or so, and the way it is evolving is pretty incredible. I'll also add just some of the infrastructure. This was a landscape that had about 375 miles of primitive logging roads, and that was about it. And so for visitors experiencing this place, it can be a bit intimidating. A lot of dirt roads, a lot of rough roads where you'd need four-wheel drive, high clearance vehicles. And we're slowly working on making that better. The Park Service has done an incredible job maintaining and upgrading roads. The main road in from the kind of Stacyville area has been upgraded with bridges, culverts have been replaced. The road is consistently graded. There's a lot more gravel that's been brought in. It's not a smooth road, but it's definitely a lot better than it has been. And then a visitor will now drive across the Whetstone Bridge, across the East Branch of the Penobscot, and drive the 16-mile loop road. And from the loop road now, there's various hikes and turnouts along the way. There's 2 established camping areas, one at Longsoos Camp that is right on the Penobscot River, and the other at Sandbank Stream, both of which you can drive up to for car camping, and make reservations on reservations.gov, which is a great NPS and all federal public land reservation system. There's a few backcountry camping areas, both of which are along the International Appalachian Trail, one near Barnard near the trailhead to climb Barnard Mountain, and one at the Wasatacook Stream and Katahdin Brook confluence, which is a beautiful spot and not too far of a walk in from the parking area. But then from there, there's some incredible places to swim. The Wasatacook Stream is my absolute favorite place in the whole world, and there's beautiful rock formations that you can slide down, and it's more of a granite substrate than many of the rivers in northern Maine. So it runs very clear. Doesn't have that kind of tannic quality that some rivers have, and it's a great place to swim and trout fish and cool off in the warmer summer months. There's been a big constituency that has been bike riding a lot, and as the emergence of gravel bikes have increased, this is one of the most fun places to do long gravel bike rides. I recently rode from Whetstone Bridge around the Loop Road and out, and it was just phenomenally beautiful and very few cars. It's just really a wonderful spot. And then, of course, the visitor contact station, which is being built now, will be finished by August of next year, when our reserve rights expire. So there's a bit of a deadline there, but that is coming along well. And then, of course, the visitation in the north end, it's a bit farther away from everything, but it's some wonderful hiking and biking down the much more rapid end of the east branch of the Penobscot. There's a lot of falls, and the river is much more active in that section. So it's a lot of fun to go and hike along the river. And then of course the river itself is just one of the great kind of wild canoe trips that you can take in Maine, where there's just absolutely no development along most of the upper stretch of the river all the way through the monument. And it's just a really, really beautiful place to paddle. And again, there's also two places. There's to reserve on cabins on the north end. There's one at Haskell Hut, and there's one at Big Spring Brook, both of which are kind of primitive cabins that can be reserved and make for really nice, easy camping. And then in the wintertime, those places are along a groomed cross-country ski trail, so you can do some winter access and really kind of get out there. And it's pretty interesting because you do feel like you're a long way away from everything. And then of course, being there at night is a really incredible experience. This is one of the few international dark sky sanctuaries in the United States. It's there's only two in the entire East, and this is one of them. And so getting out there and seeing the stars with all the news about space this week, it's definitely made me think about looking up into the cosmos and feeling a part of a very, very, very big system. And you certainly get to feel that up there at night. So I strongly recommend you all to make a trip up there, whether it's in the summer or winter. It's a beautiful place to go. I strongly recommend you to visit the communities around the monument. There are some wonderful things to do and see, and there's some incredible people that have really made some transformative changes in their lives and their communities. And it's been an amazing journey to be on with them. So stopping off from those communities is a really important thing. And then I'll put in one plug for becoming a member of the Friends of Katahdin Woods and Waters. They are the advocacy group and the philanthropic partner to the National Park Unit. They have done incredible work with programming, taking school kids out into the monument, teaching a life science curriculum to several hundred, if not thousands, of students so far in northern Maine. And they do a lot of great events in the monument around the calendar year, including this August, where we have a big anniversary party to celebrate the signing of the proclamation. So that'll be, you can go to their website, friendsofkatahdinwoodsandwaters.org, and become a member there and get all the information about the events that they hold over the course of the year. And with membership becomes a great map, which is super helpful because there's a lot of places to get turned around, and it's helpful to have a good map. So that's what's been happening up in the monument, and it's a really remarkable thing to see what conserved land can do for the transformative effect that it can have on community, and the tremendous amount of learning that has been offered to me through this process is something that I will carry with me forever. So it's been quite a journey. And so I'll stop there, and I'd love to answer any questions and hear what you all are thinking and go from there.
Thank you so much, Lucas. Thank you for walking us through this story, and thank you for your role in moving it along. It is truly so exciting, and I know so many of us are really proud to see the National Monument coming together and continuing and thinking about what the future might look like. For all of you, just a reminder that this afternoon you will get a follow-up email with a link to a couple of things that will help you plan your next trip to the monument if you haven't already been there or you're thinking about heading back again. We'll include a link to the Friends of Katahdin Woods and Waters and join Lucas in suggesting that you join. We'll also include the official National Park Service link. And for those of you who were with us last week at the tail end, our good friend Nick Lund, who was here talking about the birds of Maine, said, wait, you're talking about Katahdin Woods and Waters? Maine Audubon has an awesome new birding hotspot map. So we're going to send that out to you again, too, so you can get a sense of where you might want to go to see some of the birds of Maine. So take a look in your email later this afternoon for all of that, and feel free to send some questions my way. If you are not planning a physical trip this weekend or in the very near future, you might be wondering, how on earth do I get to see all of these places that Lucas was just talking about? So Lucas, are there virtual tours of the park? Is there anything that we can go to where we can go to just see the magic?
Yeah, there is the VIA agency, which is a advertising and marketing firm here in Portland. They worked with Wabanaki community members to make a short film that I can't remember the word for it, but they used the microphones they used looked like human ears, and so it was able to capture sound in the same way that our own ears capture them. So there's this great 2-minute video that you can put on headphones and listen to it, and it's canoe paddles in the water and children running down trails and the rain and the wind, and it's really, really beautiful. And I'll see if I can dig up a link so you can share that in the email, because it's short, but it gives you a little flavor for what a few days in the monument is like.
I can't wait. That sounds amazing. And yes, I will not hit send on that email until we've had a chance to track that one down.
Perfect.
Thank you. So another question for you. When we think about the national monument, national parks, and what makes this place so special, right? It's relative isolation and that sort of remote wilderness feel. There are folks who have said that, the worst thing to happen to a wilderness spot is to turn it into a national park and bring tons of traffic and people. And what do you think about that? I mean, it's not really the worst thing that could happen, of course, but how do we balance the increase in visitor traffic, in vehicle traffic, in all of those things that go into the support of a big national monument or park, with the real concerns about keeping places conserved and safe?
It's a really important question, and I think that if we went to Acadia National Park today, we'd feel a crush of people, and it can feel a bit overwhelming. However, it's available for all of us to see, and if it wasn't a park, it would be developed. It would be off limits to us. So there is this tension of how many people get to see it. What is the carrying capacity of a place like this? Sorry, I'm across the street from a fire department. So, but what is a park? How does it get managed to take care of the resource the best it possibly can? And the nice thing about the Park Service is it's been doing it for 100 years, right? There's a long precedent of managing natural resources, and some places are going to get visited more. The top of Cadillac is going to be a busy spot. Thunder Hole is going to be a busy spot. But I guarantee that there are places that you can go in Acadia on a August Saturday afternoon and have it all to yourself. And the trick, I think, is understanding that it takes a little bit to find those places, and that you get out of it what you put into it. And also understand the unforeseen consequences. In Zion National Park, for example, the roads were so crowded with people, and it's just one road in, and you have to go in and out. And it was so crowded, and people were stopping all over the place. And they decided, you know what, we're going to stop. We're going to not allow cars. And so they got a bus system. And it wasn't too long after the bus system was in place that backcountry rangers started saying, boy, there's so many more people in the backcountry. Because what was happening is when the parking lot got full at a trailhead, that was as many people as was going into the backcountry. But now there's no limit to, and so the bus would just continue to drop people off. So, you know, it's a lesson learned. We can understand, oh, right, that if we're going to set up a bus system and we're going to have trailheads that go into the backcountry, we have to find ways to manage the use, and we have to educate the people that are going there and manage expectations. Having access to the outdoors, having access to open space is paramount to human existence. So that is clear, and it benefits us from, you know, in emotional ways, in health ways, in our ability to think clearly and behave differently. I mean, there's so many quantifiable things that benefits from being outside. So if we use that as our baseline, what we really need is just more places, right? If places are getting too crowded, then we just need more of them. And that's, you know, that's sort of the way I like to think about it.
I really appreciate that. And thank you for that reminder too, that any, you know, national park can contain multitudes, right? There can be places that are busy and full. And yes, I've been at the top of Cadillac Mountain when you could see where it felt like wall-to-wall people, but there's something amazing about that, to look around and think, wow, this is what all of these people have chosen to do with their summer vacation, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to be in this beautiful place. And we're here together, and people are typically pretty friendly. So yeah, that's great. And I've been exactly as you say, and all by myself in places in Acadia, even in the middle of the summer. So thank you for that reminder and that thoughtfulness about how we plan.
Someone sent a message here just asking about sort of the congressional delegation and where they're at now, which seems like we're sort of in this interesting moment where, you know, early on the delegation was not supportive of passing legislation. There was still some skepticism, and sort of there was obviously some resistance in the region. But what's been so remarkable, and Kathleen, to your point, how you look around and you see people that have made their decision to come to Maine and spend time here for their, you know, 1-2 weeks summer vacation, and just how there's this sort of sense of pride to be like, oh, you're choosing to come here, like that's where I live, this is a beautiful place. That's happening in the Katahdin region now. The opposition has really virtually gone away because the vacuum that was filled with misinformation is no longer there. You know, there is now a national park unit, and there are rangers, and there's a superintendent, and they're, you know, they live in town and their kids go to school, and the sort of mysteries of the unknown are no longer unknown. And because of that, the congressional delegation is hearing really positive things from community members about what Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument is providing for them. And they've actually been really wonderful. Senator Collins has worked really hard to secure federal funding from her position as an appropriator. She also was a co-sponsor of the Great American Outdoors Act, which fully funded Land and Water Conservation Fund, and created a congressional appropriation to the National Park Service through the National Park Foundation on an ongoing basis. So the park has really got a lot more funding because of Collins' leadership and the work that Senator King does. Now he's chairing the subcommittee on national parks and energy and natural resources. So that he's in a really unique place to benefit Katahdin Woods and Waters. You know, ultimately, what we love is that legislation to pass. And the monument by name would be turned into a national park. That's how most of the national parks, or at least half of the national parks that exist today, were established, including including Acadia National Park in 1916. It was established through presidential proclamation, and it was then 3 years later turned into a park through legislation. So that's a path that we'd like to be on, and we hope that the delegation will at some point soon take advantage of their position and influence to do that.
That is just so encouraging, and I think there's really at its core something to celebrate about an initiative that is bringing our whole congressional delegation together. Do you see it also bringing Maine people together? I mean, we talk all the time about and wrestle all the time with the political divides that exist in our nation and in our state, right? The difference between the more liberal Southern Maine and more conservative rest of the state, and wondering, what's the role for Katahdin Woods and Waters in being something that brings people together?
Yeah, I love thinking in these lines. My feeling is that public lands and open space is where we come together. They are the public commons. They're where, Red America and Blue America come together and in wonder and enjoyment and connection to family and connection to nature. It affects us all in the same visceral way, regardless of our political beliefs and regardless of our political ideological perspectives. And I think Katahdin is a microcosm of that. I think Maine is a microcosm of that. I know a lot of very conservative rural Mainers that live for being outside. It is what turns their wheels more than any other thing. And whether that's spending a week at deer camp, whether it's getting out in the spring and fiddleheading, the time that they spend outside, often with family, is the thing that is most important to them. And I know many very left-leaning people that have the same goals and desires. And I think that if we spent less time debating our viewpoints on social media and in the opinion and editorial pages of newspapers, and met face to face in our public commons, we would recognize that we have so much more in common with one another than we think. And so, again, we need more space for people to get together in these commons, right? We need more of it.
I love that. I love that. So if I'm a person if I'm in Southern Maine and I want to get up to Katahdin Woods and Waters, how do I get there? What's the best way?
All right. So it's the same distance as Acadia, and it's a little bit easier. You just get on 95 or 295. You drive north, and you go through Bangor, and about an hour north of Bangor, you come to the Patton Stacy Sherman exit. You take the exit there, and from there it's just about 10 miles into the entrance, and one left turn and one right turn, and you're there. So it's a quick drive up. There's some great campgrounds outside the park. There's some great lodges, and the Shin Pond Village, Mount Chase Lodge, the New England Outdoor Center all provide some incredible places to stay, and hospitality and food, and they're just wonderful spots. And yeah, there's a lot to see and do. And of course, it borders Baxter Park too, which is another 200,000 acres of Maine wilderness set aside for Maine people. So it's a pretty remarkable landscape that's kind of growing in size with the Debskeneg Wilderness, the Nature Conservancy owns, and Baxter Park, and now Katahdin Woods and Waters. It's a pretty impressive mosaic of conserved land.
What's the relationship like between the National Monument and the state park and the privately conserved lands?
It's
I
great.
like to think you guys are all sitting around a table saying, let's do this and that together, but.
Yeah, I mean, when we owned the land, we were definitely doing that, and now the Park Service is playing that role as the owners and managers of this landscape. So the Park Service has a great relationship with Baxter and with the various other landowners, and they're not all conserved land. You know, Katahdin Woods and Waters is surrounded on a lot of sides by kind of industrial landowners that their land is what's considered the wood basket that supplies mills, fiber and dimensional saw logs. So there's a really important relationship there that needs to be maintained and needs to be really healthy, because there's a lot of safety implications that are in the mix. You know, we want to make sure that there are not visitor conflicts between people that are up there, you know, making a living and working really hard off the land, and people that are up there recreating. And so those relationships are really important. And it's my understanding that they've been really strong and really healthy up to this point.
It's been such a journey for you and for everybody to get to this point. What have you gotten out of this work so far?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot. Obviously, there's a lot, and I had to really kind of hoover up information to understand everything there is to know about public land policy and legislation, and that was all learning, certainly. And then there was this human relationship dynamic that really has been a growth edge for me as I try to understand various different viewpoints, and not just in a way to find compromise, but to really understand what people want and need, how communities come together and what divides them, and how to play a role in bringing a lot of different stakeholders around a table and trying to find a consensus and common ground. And that kind of human experience has been just a fascinating and an incredibly important thing to learn. And then what's been most valuable to me and what I appreciate the most is the grace and generosity of Wabanaki community members, and to allow me to stumble all over myself to understand what Native communities are like, what they've experienced, how to understand the past without dwelling there, to know that Wabanaki community members are still here and they are thinking about their future, and we should think about their future, and that to fundamentally understand that when they are given opportunities to manage and own land, they will not do to it what we've done to it. And I think there is this fear within the colonial settler mindset that if we turn control back to Indigenous communities, that they will do things to it that we've done to it in retribution of some sort. And that is absolutely not the case. And I've had to rewire my mind to understand that. And the sort of grace and generosity of Indigenous community members to help me understand that and stick with me as I needed to understand that has just been a remarkable experience. And you know, a friend of mine who's Passamaquoddy is a basket maker, and I asked him if I could make a basket with him, and he said, "Sure. We're going to start by going up to Aroostook County and cut down an ash tree." And we spent, that's not the way I was thinking about it, you know, and we spent a day in the forest, and we carried an ash tree out to a field and broke it down with hammers and split it all into its pieces. And over the course of the next 8 or 9 months, we made a pack basket together. And that experience was just one of the most profound experiences of my life, to finish with this very tangible object that I made with my hands, and to have this understanding and friendship with someone that I would have never had otherwise. And so this very intangible thing that emerged from the making of this basket, and it's somewhat of a metaphor for the way I've been going and understanding more about the indigenous community in Maine, and just how fortunate we are to have such incredible leaders that are willing to show us so much. And I think at the very least, we need to meet them where they are.
Lucas, I have chills. That is such a beautiful, thank you for sharing that experience and the just everything that you have learned and been able to now share with us. So I know it's no substitute for all of us doing our own individual work and having those conversations, but really just incredible. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thinking about being in the park, or the monument. What's your favorite season? What's your favorite time to be there?
Oh, that's a tricky one. There's so many great things to go and do and see, but I think I have to like October, late September, October, hiking up to the top of Barnard Mountain. It looks across this valley. Katahdin Lake is in the sort of mid-range, and Katahdin towers up on the other side of the lake, and there's nothing to see but trees in every imaginable color and water everywhere, and just those crisp fall days where you can kind of smell the duff of the forest and the high pressure and crisp air. It's just there's not a lot that can beat that for me.
Part of me wishes that you were showing us photos right now, and then part of me knows that there's nothing that you could show us that would capture that experience, and that maybe it's a good thing that you're not showing us pictures right now, because we just have to get out there and experience it for ourselves. So I'm frustrated and grateful.
Yeah,
I can't see exactly what you're doing, what you're talking about.
On an iPhone, you can search, by location through your photographs, and so if I type in Katahdin Woods and Waters, it's like 2,000 photographs that come up, and I'm always like, it's like,
yeah, this isn't what it was like. That's not, oh yeah. So you have spent so much time in different seasons in different places and over years. What, if anything, is different in these 6 years of national monumentdom and your experiences before the monument was official?
Really, it's visitors. That's the big difference. I remember after I knew everything was going to work, it's like August 17th of 2016, we had transferred the deeds to the federal government. The president had yet to sign the proclamation, but we knew it was going to happen. I went up there all, by myself, and I drove up to the lookout, and I watched the sunset and walked around. I laid down in the parking lot where on the loop road with this incredible view, and I just thought to myself, like, I don't think I'll be able to lay down here in where there'll be visitors here. I can get run over, right? I just had this moment of like, this is going to change. This will be different, and I didn't really know what to think of it until I started seeing people enjoying it the way I enjoyed it, and it still is. Like, I was up there on this bike ride just recently, and I came around the corner to near the Barnard Mountain trailhead, and there are these cars parked in the parking lot. I'm like, oh my gosh, people are up there hiking. It was just like such an exciting thing to see. So that's a real change, and to see people camping and see people hiking and with their families and doing all the things that we said were going to happen, and it's just it's a huge change, because it felt like a big empty landscape for a long time and felt a bit lonely, kind of being out there advocating for this thing. And now it feels like it's building community and people are there.
That is so beautiful. And yes, please don't lie down in the road anymore. We want to keep you around. What are you working on now, and what's next for Elliotsville Foundation?
That's a great question. So I'm still working on the infrastructure. This is a massive project, and there's a fundraising component to it. So I've been doing a lot of fundraising and managing a big construction project. It takes a lot of my time, and I'm starting to think about what is next for EFI. So our reserved rights end at the end of August of 2023, and the mission of our foundation is to focus on the unique intersection of land conservation and rural economic development. And my theory of change there is that we can build human-powered recreational infrastructure and people will come use it, and it'll create whole communities. And so the land that we own and have conserved now, after the gift of the monument took much of our land holdings, we still have about 45,000 acres of land in Piscataquis County. And Piscataquis County is where I grew up. I was born in Dover Foxcroft. I grew up in Guilford and Parkman and these small little communities. And it's near and dear to my heart. And most of the people that I grew up with either live down here in Southern Maine or have gone farther afield. And I want to try to see if we can build infrastructure for human-powered recreation that will attract people back, either to live and work there or to come up and visit and get some time in the outdoors. So our first project is working with the International Mountain Biking Association and the Trust for Public Land to collaborate on a trail concept plan, where we hope to build about 65 miles of mountain bike trails over the course of the next decade. We'll probably commence building in 2014 or 2024 after the monument projects wrap up. And I'd love to be able to drive into Monson and see a bike shop on Main Street and be able to ride some world-class trails. And I also am really intrigued by communities like Monson, where Piscataquis County is one of the top 10 most resilient counties to climate change in the country. There's tons of fresh water, tons of trees, very little population. And so it's got a lot of really amazing things going for it. And the town of Monson doesn't have a lot of young people living there right now. And a lot of people have moved away, and Moosehead Manufacturing is closed down. And so what can we do to revitalize the community and also capitalize on some of the great stuff that's already happening there? There are some incredible community members that are doing wonderful things. And the Libra Foundation has been doing a lot of really cool things around the arts. So that we're going to start kind of focusing our attention there, but it'll continue to be sort of centered around community and outdoor recreation and rural economies.
You have to promise to keep us posted, because
I will.
All of those things sound amazing, and I'm just so grateful for your vision. And when we think about what it looks like, what the future of Maine looks like, and how we can bring all of the very best elements together. I'm so grateful. Thank you for spending this time with us today, Lucas. Thank you for lighting a little bit of a fire under me. I confess I have not been to the monument yet, but that's going to change after this program. So thank you, and thanks to everybody for being with us today. It is a beautiful summer day, and I hope you are feeling inspired to get outside and have some of those incredible experiences that Lucas, you shared with us today. I also hope you'll all plan to join us next week. Next week's program is building a joyful, welcoming, powerful climate movement that cannot be ignored. We will have Marty Pottinger, who is the Executive Director and Artistic Director of Art at Work, to share about the role of community arts projects in inspiring a diverse, flourishing movement for the future. We are keeping things upbeat in this lunch and learn space right now. Thank you, Lucas. Thanks to all of you, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.